We're going to look at today some of the changes relating to using flexible labour. The government likes to keep us on our toes, so as usual there are a raft of things happening which will impact on how you use temporary labour, how you supply temporary labour and temporary workers themselves. We're going to have a look at a few areas, so tax relief changes, travel and subsistence, the introduction of the national living wage and some of the myths and some of the things that you need to be aware of in respect of that, modern slavery, ethical audits and the requirements in respect of that, 0 hours contracts, again dispelling some myths in respect of those, the government's new idea about how it enforces compliance in the sector, the Director of Labour Market Enforcement, and then the apprenticeship levy, which will come in 2017, and then really just look at why compliance is absolutely key now with regards to using and supplying temporary labour. Travel and subsistence is a tax relief, and it's a tax relief that is available to certain types of employees. We're going to have a quick look at what is travel and subsistence, look at why the government are making the changes, what are the changes that the government are going to make, who are they going to affect, what are the likely impact, and then what do we need to do. So hopefully by the time we've finished you'll get a pretty good idea of all the main issues in relation to this, and it will be a big have a big impact. And I think at the moment, I think quite a lot of end users and employment businesses are burying their head in the sand and hoping that it'll all be all right. It might be all right, but I do think it's going to have an impact on quite a few businesses and how they are supplied. So what's travel and subsistence? Well, it's a tax relief and it's available to some employees, and it came into existence in the construction sector in the 1970s. So the idea was that if, say for instance, you were a brickie and you were working for Barratt, and Barratt said, right, okay, we've got a new development in Bristol, and this particular bricklayer lived in Manchester. So we want to send you away for 3 months to go and work on that Bristol site and to build houses in Bristol. And then when you finish that job in Bristol, the next job you've got is in Kent. So we want you to go and spend 4 months working in Kent, building houses in Kent for us. And that particular brickie would have his home in Manchester. He would travel to Bristol, probably Monday to Friday, stay in digs when he was working there, come home at a weekend, go back down on a Monday, and then follow that pattern. And then when he moved to Kent, he'd do exactly the same thing. And the argument that the construction industry made was, it's not fair, because if he was permanently being assigned to Bristol, he would have the benefit of some tax relief. So he could relocate his family and he could relocate his home and he could claim some tax relief in respect of those relocation costs. But because he was transient, because he was moving around from site to site, he didn't have the ability to claim those tax reliefs. So the government, as I say, in the 70s, decided that they would allow this tax relief in the construction industry. But the idea was, what they basically said, right, okay, what we'll do, all the costs that you incur whilst you're living away from home, Monday to Friday, you can offset against your gross pay. So say he was earning £1,000 a week and he was spending £200 a week on his board and keep in Bristol whilst he was working on that particular site. He could offset the £200 from his £1,000, so actually he'd only pay tax and national insurance on the £800 rather than £1,000. So that made him much better off. In the mid-90s, some recruitment businesses said, well, hang on a minute, this applies to our workers, because a lot of our workers will go away and travel. They've got no permanent workplace. They don't know whether they're going to be in Coventry one day or whether they're going to be in Birmingham another day. You know, if they had a permanent job and a permanent workplace, then they could move their family within a reasonable commuting distance of that workplace, and that would be fixed, and they know what the cost would be each week going to and from work, and they could work out whether then the wage that was on offer in return for the length of commuting and the cost of commuting was a good commercial deal or not. Whereas a temporary worker or a contractor doesn't have that luxury. He doesn't know where he's going to get sent from week to week, in theory, and he has no ability to control what his costs are likely to be. So we think that this travel and subsistence scheme, which has been established in construction, should apply to recruitment. And some very big recruitment agencies spent many millions of pounds basically putting together a scheme and convincing the government that this would apply in the recruitment industry as well as in construction. In the last 5 years, you've had an explosion of umbrella companies, and umbrella companies run and exist purely on the basis of this tax relief that's available. Now, the tax relief is only available to some employees, so you'll note the word employee. Traditionally, as recruitment businesses, we would supply temporary workers, and employers or end users would want temporary workers. However, if you're going to run a travel and subsistence scheme, they have to be employed, and they have to be employed by either the umbrella or the recruitment agency. And the test really is that they've got no permanent place of work. So as long as when they come in and you send them out on their first assignment, on the first time they arrive at a client, the expectation, and that's a really important word, expectation, is that they won't be there for more than 24 months, then HMRC are happy that they have no permanent place of work, that they are a mobile worker and that they are eligible to use travel and subsistence tax relief. And it is, you know, as it was in that example with the brickie, it's the cost of travel to and from work every day, and it's the cost of subsistence, so it's the meal costs that they spend whilst they're there. The idea being, as I say, that they've got no fixed location where they're working. That might move around in lots of different locations, and therefore they're able to offset that as a business cost, ultimately. And what it does, it results in lower tax and national insurance payments being paid to HMRC. So the worker is better off. It allows the continued use of lower rates with end users. So, you know, if you looked at someone that was on, say, £10 an hour, and that's what they were being paid, the effect is, using a travel and subsistence scheme, it probably equates to around £12 an hour because of the saving that they make in respect of the money in their hand. Why are they making the changes? Well, they want to create a level playing field. They say it's unfair that Joe Bloggs, who goes into work every day at that particular site, works alongside Pete Smith, but Pete Smith is supplied through an employment business. Pete Smith gets paid the same as Joe Bloggs, but Pete Smith ends up with more money in his pocket at the end of the week because he's allowed to offset the cost of his travel and subsistence getting to and from work and the cost of his meals whilst he's at work. And they say that's not fair. They completely overlook that very first point that I made, that a temporary worker has no permanent place of work. He doesn't know that he's going to be going to that site until something happens with his employment. He's just basically there on an assignment for a limited period of time, and you know, next week there may not be enough work and he may get shifted off 20 miles in the opposite direction. So it's a bit naive, I think, to say that they are true comparators and that there should be a level playing field, but that is their stated objection in respect of the changes to legislation. And the other one is tax simplification.